At Sunday Surefire, we have a vision, and that vision is to dish out the most sound fantasy and betting advice in the industry. And guess what? It just so happens that our brand new sponsor at KYMZ Oils has a vision too. Together, we'll give you the fresh picks, and KYMZ will give you all the fresh scents. Beautiful match. All you got to do is Google KYMZ Oils and try out their top seller, Vision, to start smelling fresh today. Make sure to use promo code KYMZ Surefire for an extra 5% off. That's KYMZ Oils. Remember, just Google it. You'll find it. First thing that comes up, promo code KYMZ Surefire.
Sunday Surefire Podcast. I'm your host, the Commish. Joining me today is the co-host, Aaron Downtown Brown.
Hey.
And the other co-host, Ethan Weaver.
Commish, how we doing?
Doing pretty well, boys. Doing pretty well, hanging in there. Football is upon us quickly here. We have the first week of preseason already in the books. And this episode here, we're not going to have a ton of structure to it. We're actually just going to talk kind of just some happenings around the league. We're going to talk about some of the recent signings that have taken place. We're going to talk about some camp battles and kind of some more crowded situations and kind of how to see where we're at on those developments and kind of give you our thoughts on them. So this is kind of a good exercise. It's going to be more of a conversation that we're having here as football fans and as fantasy analysts as well. So let's just go right to our first point here. We got Dalvin Cook finally reaching an agreement with the Jets on a 1-year, $7 million contract plus another $1.6 million in incentives in his deal. So what do you think, Ethan, we'll start with you, my man. What do you think about Cook finally coming to terms in New York?
I mean, I think it's something that we were all projecting. I mean, he was there on the sidelines at Jets practice. Aaron Rodgers basically came out and said that he's taking less money, even though he's really not, but restructuring to create more money for free agent signings, and basically alluded to Dalvin Cook on the sideline. So I was expecting Dalvin Cook in New York. It's unfortunate for that running back room. Izzy Abanikanda has been looking pretty good through 2 preseason games, and that pretty much killed any shot of him being relevant this year. Michael Carter, he's going to go down to minimum RB3 on the depth chart. And Zonovan Knight was actually decent as a rookie last year, but he's probably going to have trouble making the roster at this point. So big impacts to that room. I still think Breece Hall is going to be the main guy when fully healthy. But what scares me, and which I alluded to in previous episodes where Breece Hall was my bust candidate, was the fact that the Jets are going to take it very easy with him. In my opinion, I don't think you bring in Dalvin Cook and then just force Breece Hall to kind of hit the ground running week 1. Yeah, they're going to ease Breece Hall in. They have aspirations for a Super Bowl this year. They're going to be very patient with Breece Hall, and Dalvin Cook's going to get the majority of touches early on, and then it's going to go to a probably mainly a 2-man committee with Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. But obviously kills the upside of Breece Hall, and it kills the upside of Dalvin Cook. I mean, Dalvin Cook obviously over the past few seasons has been an RB1 every single year in Minnesota. Clearly the guy, those days are over. I know Cook lost some efficiency last year, and he's not the same guy he was 2-3 years ago, but still a decent, productive NFL back that's going to get his touches, and just makes this situation pretty messy in New York.
Yeah, let me jump in there on the analytics piece of Cook. I have those queued up here, ready to go. You know, he's a guy who was very fantasy viable, like Ethan said, but I think last year was his worst year from an efficiency standpoint for sure. And I think joining up as part of a committee here with Breece Hall and some of the other guys that you mentioned is exactly what he needed. I mean, just looking at his 2022 season here, his true yards per carry was 37th in the league, yards per touch 27th, juke rate 39th, evaded tackles 15th, which wasn't bad. His breakaway run weight was 30th in the league among running backs. So, kind of starting to show signs of age and wear and tear piling up. So I think this is going to maybe even extend his career a little bit past 2023, even where, but just for this year, it's kind of he's a good compliment from a real football standpoint. He can do a lot of the things that Breece Hall does. He does not have to come off the field on third down. If the Jets don't want him to, he's a capable pass catcher. It does hurt some of the upside for Breece Hall. I agree on that point. I think by the end of the year, we're going to see Breece taking more and more of the workload as the season progresses, just because he was drafted in the second round last year to be the guy that they lean on. And I think Cook's a kind of a good guy to help Breece come along slow, and then maybe see a little bit of work as the year goes on to Breece Hall in the way that the Jets wanted this to unfold when they took Breece Hall where they did 2 years ago. So that's where I'm at on the Dalvin Cook spot, Aaron. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think with this signing, I think it's going to be a little frustrating for both Hall and Cook owners, as you guys said, because I think they're both able to play identical downs, as you mentioned, right? Like you don't necessarily need to take either one of them out. They can actually both be workhorse backs. So um, it reminds me of a situation where I think coaches will sometimes just play the hot hand, right? So if you got a good drive, you might leave them in. Where sometimes they script their plays, where that might not be the case. I mean, they might just go with what's rolling and what Aaron wants to do too. Um, so it's interesting because you think of even the Green Bay offense with Aaron Rodgers when he had Aaron Jones, and in the later years with AJ Dillon, right? So like at least there you kind of knew like a thunder and lightning approach, but I think there might be situations where fantasy owners might get a little angry because somebody might be on the goal line and they have no they're going to be comfortable switching one of them out to give one a breather, and just the opposite of just playing the hot hand too. So I think it's going to be like pick your poison over there with those two once Hall is fully healthy. But yeah, I think it's a great move from a football perspective, and I think if you're a Jets fan, you're happy just to add more weapons. But as us on the show with fantasy owners, it could be possibly frustrating at times.
Man, as a Jets fan, you're just happy that the team has a sniff at the playoffs this year. They have the longest active playoff drought in the NFL, dating all the way back to 2010, which is kind of crazy to think about. I mean, Ethan and I being Patriots fans, we know the Jets are the Jets, man, and they've been just a loser franchise for a long time. But there really is some optimism around them. I mean, they're getting star players now, which is that's something that did not happen in the past. So things are starting to look up in Jetland, at least for as far as those fans are concerned. But let's stick in the AFC East with our hometown Patriots here, Ethan. And I'll start with you with this one. Like Zeke Elliott signs with our Patriots here. It's a 1-year deal worth up to $6 million in total, $3 million in coming in base salary, $1 million in the form of incentives, 1 year, $1 million in the form of a bonus, and then up to $2 million in incentives. So, I guess what are your thoughts on Zeke joining the team? What are your thoughts on the price point, and how do you think it's going to kind of shape this backfield for 2023?
For real life football, I mean, I don't mind Zeke coming to the Patriots. It gives some running back depth, some veteran depth that they really didn't have. I like Pierre Strong coming into this. He was a sleeper in some previous episodes that I talked about, but clearly the Patriots weren't okay with having Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong behind Ramondre Stevenson. They clearly wanted a veteran presence. They brought in Leonard Fournette, they brought in Dalvin Cook, and then obviously they brought in Zeke Elliott, and Zeke Elliott ended up signing for with a 1-year deal up to $6 million. So to me, obviously this limits Ramondre Stevenson's upside, but I'm not it's not all doom and gloom for Ramondre Stevenson managers. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the clear guy on third downs, 2-minute drill. He's still going to get his touches. Zeke Elliott, by all accounts, is definitely in the back nine of his career. He looked pretty cooked in Dallas last year, and the Dallas Cowboys, they literally were okay with the likes of Malik Davis, Rico Dowdle, Ronald Jones and Deuce Vaughn to pick up the slack for the vacated carries and targets that Zeke Elliott left. And those names aren't stud running backs, right? They're kind of coming from the scrap heap here, and that's coming a lot from me, considering Ronald Jones was mentioned in that party of four backs there.
We
But
really can't go a whole episode without talking about Ronald Jones, can we?
oh, of course not. But
we should do a full Rojo, Will Fuller, Gabe Davis episode, and me and Ethan would be set.
I'm gonna be sick for that episode. And
yeah. We just can't quit on these guys. But but no, it just, so the Dallas Cowboys clearly could have they could have re-signed Zeke and brought him back for a similar contract, and they said, yeah, we're all set. So I don't think Zeke's going to come in here and relegate Ramondre Stevenson to a minuscule role. He's kind of, as we alluded to, Dalvin Cook. He's late in his career. He's just a committee back right now. He's going to spell Stevenson. He can take up those in between the 20s carries and ease Stevenson's workload. Because last year, Stevenson came out and said that it was a grind last year. He said his body was killing him towards the end of the season, that the NFL workload was taking a massive toll on his body, and he just wasn't fresh down the stretch. And the New England Patriots realized that. They knew that, and they wanted to bring somebody in that they were comfortable with in pass protection and to hand the ball off that's not going to fumble, that is a veteran that they're confident in, and that was Zeke Elliott. So I still think Ramondre Stevenson has upside, but it's gonna really suck if Zeke Elliott falls in the end zone 8 to 10 times this year, because that's definitely gonna hurt, obviously, Ramondre Stevenson's upside. But I think from a football perspective, it's not a bad move from the Patriots. But Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion, is still the clear RB1 on this team, and it's not even close.
Aaron, talk to me about Zeke here. Well, I guess we'll get you sandwiched in here between two Patriots fans on our newest running back.
There you go. I appreciate that. Sometimes I feel a little outnumbered these days on the show, but no, I think that it's not so much, the talk of the town isn't so much the Zeke, Zeke's fantasy value. It's more Stevenson. What does that do to Stevenson? I agree with Ethan. I think Stevenson is still the guy over there. You got to remember, I mean, Stevenson wasn't even the RB1 at the start of the season with the pass last year. That was Damian Harris's job he took away from him, right? So that was coming after a season where Damian Harris had 15 touchdowns in 2021. So I think the recent trend in New England is they still punch the ball in, and rather Zeke, yes, he may steal a few goal line touchdowns this year, but I think still at the end of the day, they're still gonna punch the ball in. I think that's what we know of Bill Belichick. So I still think Stevenson will be an every down back. He'll get his goal line carries. Yes, Zeke probably will too. But I think a lot of people were maybe thinking Stevenson to be a top 5 running back. Is it still in the cards? Yeah, I don't think Zeke's going to take that much away from Stevenson this year. So, and then on the football perspective, like you said, I think it does help the Pats out, get a little bit more pass protection at times for Mac Jones, give Stevenson a break as well, like you said, to give him some rest a little bit more. So I think it's just a good move, and I don't think fantasy players should freak out too much by the Zeke signing, as we know, it's more of a running back committee league, right? So I wouldn't be running for the hills just yet with the with the old Zeke signing.
I agree on a lot of the points from the real football standpoint. I won't go too deep down that rabbit hole. Yes, it's a veteran back, someone who can kind of spell Ramondre when needed. Definitely agree on those points. I just listed off a lot of the metrics on Dalvin Cook and him kind of fading out. A lot of these metrics are actually even worse for Ezekiel Elliott. If we're looking at just his 2022 season, in yards per touch among running backs, he was 55th in the league. Juke rate, 48th, which is honestly kind. If you watch Zeke play last year, I was surprised it was even that high among his peers at the running back position. Evaded tackles, number 36. Breakaway run weight, 41st. So just really just down. If you look at his receptions, I mean, for the 5th year in a row, he had a decline in the receiving game. in that department. He only caught 17 passes last season. So like the guy, as good as he is as a pass blocker, I can see him getting out there on maybe 3rd and long if it's an obvious passing down and he just needs to diagnose like where the blitzers are coming and he can eat up bodies that way. Yes, that definitely is going to help the Patriots for sure. But let's not forget Ramondre Stevenson caught 69 balls a season ago. They're not going to just take that away from this offense that desperately needs playmakers. They have some decent guys on the outside and in the tight end room. Overall, it's a fine collection of skill players, but that element of this backfield is definitely going to be there in the form of Ramondre Stevenson. He could be a thorn in the side of the goal line. Ezekiel Elliott, that is, 2 Ramondre managers this year for sure. But Ramondre Stevenson, at the time of this recording, which is taking place about 24 hours after Ezekiel Elliott has signed his contract, Ramondre is 25th overall in ADP in Fantasy Pros average draft position, good for RB10 off the board. And I'm not bumping him down one spot with this news. We knew this was coming. We knew that a veteran was going to join this room. Ethan mentioned a couple guys that were coming in here in the form of veterans, Fournette, etc. Even Darrell Henderson got a call. Like guys that are clearly like don't really have a ton to offer the NFL were coming in here. The Pats were looking for someone that they could get at a price point that they were comfortable with. And they may have even overpaid for Zeke a bit, but who knows? But all in all, as the resident Ramondre Stevenson truther in the big way, you're probably not shocked to hear that I'm all in on him this year, and I'm not budging off that one single bit. But
hey, one more thing here.
One more point in here on Zeke, Aaron. Talk to us Patriots fans about Zeke.
As Patriots fans, do not forget that Zeke can play center, as we're remembered by that last play of the year from the Cowboys. So
he might get blown up, though.
Yeah, but he can do it. He'll say he's not a no. He won't turn it down.
Hey, that was his last play of his Dallas career right there. Just getting pancaked.
Right. You heard it here, folks. David Andrews is on the way out in favor of Ezekiel Elliott. That's the best Browntown take of the month for sure, which is saying something for him. But Aaron, let's go back to you here. Let's see what good takes you have on this next one here. And Anthony Richardson was named the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. No big shock, I guess. We kind of knew he'd be getting on the field as a rookie, given that the Colts spent the number 4 overall pick on him in this most recent draft. But are you surprised that he got the nod as early as he did here over a Gardner Minshew who's at least bounced around the league at all? Did that surprise you at all?
I'm not surprised with the higher draft capital with the quarterbacks nowadays. Like, I think sometimes it's good for the quarterbacks as they're young to, have a good QB battle. But, I think this time of the year, it's really important for them to practice with the first team, splitting reps. If you're not ready to just commit with some of these guys, then I think, as you hear around the league, like a lot of coaches really truly value this time, training camp time, preseason time to getting out there and practicing with the first team. So I like the fact that they're just going with it, naming him the starter. I think the earlier the better. As we mentioned with that early draft capital that they're saying he's our guy for the next couple of years. So why play cute with it, right? So definitely helps his value a little bit in my eyes. I think I was a little skeptical at first. You guys were high on him pretty early, which is pretty cool. But I think the most interesting case to keep track of is this whole Jonathan Taylor scenario. I don't see Taylor leaving the team, but if he does, oh man, I'll probably buy myself an Anthony Richardson jersey at that point, because if you take away their best player on the offense and leave it with A Rich, then he's definitely gonna be a beast in fantasy. But Taylor comes back. I'm still playing both sides of the fence there with him running the offense. So that's just my 2 cents there with A Rich.
Ethan, I know you like A-Rich too, man. Keep the train rolling.
I'm very high on Anthony Richardson. Now he's the starter. That we talked about in previous episodes. If he's out there starting all 17 games, his floor is just very high. And you saw that in his preseason debut. He got off to a little rocky start. I believe his 3rd pass attempt, his mechanics were off. He was rolling out to his right. Just poor mechanics and threw it right to a defender for an interception. But then he rebounded pretty well and led some nice drives. Led a nice, I believe 13 play field goal drive and threw an absolute dime to Alec Pierce, which would have been a nice 30-plus yard touchdown. But Alec Pierce unfortunately dropped it. But you just see the velocity, you just see the arm strength, you see the athleticism. He can create plays. And I think you're just going to see a ton of that this year. And he definitely looked the best out of all the big three um, rookie quarterbacks in preseason week one. And then just a little JT update. There are reports that he is back at training camp this week. So it looks like Jonathan Taylor is going to be ready to go week one. He really has no leverage. I mean, he needs to play this year. He needs to play to get his money, and he needs to play to get that year to basically check off that year in his contract. If he doesn't play a certain number of games, the year doesn't count towards his current contract. So unfortunately, with the running back position we've talked about before, these guys really have no leverage. So JT should be out there.
Yeah, do you know if he's back out there at practice? Last I saw, his reports were that he was rejoining the team, but still sticking true to his guns on his trade demand and just kind of present but not on the field. Is that updated at all that you know of?
No, it looks like he still remains in the PUP, but he was away from the team. Now he's back with the team. So obviously a trend in the right direction. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's
Okay.
weird with Jonathan. It's weird with Jonathan Taylor because he came out. He tweeted out back at the team, basically saying that that random, like, I believe they mentioned his back or whatever. That's why he couldn't practice, and then he basically tweeted out saying, "Hey, I don't know who's reporting this, but it's essentially not true." So it's just kind of a weird situation. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it just seems like it's a tricky situation with JT and Indianapolis.
Yeah, I not shocked at all coming from Jimmer saying the Colts. I mean, I say it all the time. Ethan's heard me say it 100 times that we would look at the Colts like they were the Browns if they didn't get hit in the face with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck at the right time. So that's doesn't shock me at all that now that those guys are in the rearview mirror, that the Colts are a mess of picking in the top five. But that's not going to throw any bit of cold water on Anthony Richardson for me. I can tell you that for sure. And this news of him officially getting the start, he's going to be the guy in week one, is all I need to hear to have him fly up my rankings. He's going to I'm pretty confident here in this one that he's gonna finish in the top 10 in scoring quarterbacks this year as a rookie quarterback in 2023. I have him at QB9 overall on my board in redraft formats. He's currently 15th overall in average draft position on Fantasy Pros, and players that are ranked ahead of him at the moment that I would definitely not take ahead of Anthony Richardson are Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, and Tua Tagovailoa. I would happily put a Rich in front of every one of those guys. And I fully admit that it's going to look ugly at times. Like Ethan referenced, like there were some plays in that preseason game where he looked like a rookie. That's going to happen. I have no doubt about that in my mind. But now that we know he's the guy from week one, he's not going to lose his job at any point this season because they have to see that he can play. It almost reminds me of a little bit of Kyler Murray from last season when he was on the field, where Kyler Murray was a guy where he had like 3 points at halftime. You're like, oh my God, my week is over. Like, this is terrible. Like, I'm going to lose. And then all of a sudden, like, you stop watching the Cardinals because they're getting blown out. And he finishes with 23 fantasy points. He gets most of it in the second half because he has that incredibly high rushing floor. So, what I would recommend here is that you grab him at his current ADP, QB 15. If it creeps up a little bit, no problem. Continue to grab him there. And just don't watch the games. Like, just be happy to let the fantasy points trickle in the second half there. So, I'm all in on Anthony Richardson. I don't think we're gonna have to wait very long to get the fantasy greatness out of it, even if it takes a little bit of time for him to develop into a solid NFL quarterback that's consistent from week to week. Any thoughts on any of that, boys, before we move on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a hot topic,
They're
I
talking
guess.
over each other.
No, I just
Man.
wanted to. I just wanted to correct my previous statement. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor's back at camp, but his trade request seems to still stand. So maybe Aaron will be getting a Anthony Richardson jersey soon.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, especially my last point, and I'm not usually the one to have the final word all the time, but I have had to call backsies a couple times here already. But looking ahead, I know this is early, preseason, but for all you Anthony Richardson owners in redraft, you got week 15. They're in Pittsburgh, in Indianapolis, right, which is in a dome. Week 16, Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, and then Las Vegas to finish in your fantasy playoffs. So kind of a juicy set of championship games with Pittsburgh, the Falcons, and the Raiders at the end of the year. So that's kind of juicy, especially as you said, as a running quarterback, that he can rack up those points in your playoff run. So I wanted to throw that little tidbit out there for this year.
A running quarterback that can throw the ball a quarter mile and is who's much better than Uncle Rico. But speaking of a guy who doesn't throw the ball incredibly far down the field, but it was very viable in a small sample size last season, let's talk about Brock Purdy in the San Francisco 49ers situation. Kyle Shanahan in an interview recently said that essentially that Brock Purdy would have to melt down, is the quote that he used in practice, to lose the starting gig at this point, and then went on to say that Purdy's too good to do that, to have that type of meltdown, and that he's really high on Purdy. Looks like he's going to be, even if not, maybe he's not officially named the starter yet, but everything's looking like that's going to be the case here. And Trey Lance and Sam Darnold of the world are going to be sitting back and watching them take snaps this year. And it's kind of funny that, like, if you look at the contracts that these guys are making, I threw this out in our social medias as well. But if you combine Lance and Sam Darnold's contracts for what they're making this season, they're making almost 10 times as much as Brock Purdy will be to start for them. So they're making 10x combined to watch Mr. Irrelevant play football games this fall. So not bad work if you can get it to be a backup quarterback in the NFL, that's for sure. But Ethan, I know this one kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, being a lifelong Trey Lance truther for the last 2 years. So tell me where you're at on the situation and how do you see it unfolding in San Fran?
Yeah, I was huge on Trey Lance. It was almost, I mean, Trey Lance was getting the same kind of hype that Anthony Richardson was. I mean, A-Rich, I mean, I can't even say Anthony Richardson is getting a little more hype because, I mean, Trey Lance, I mean, I was all in on him. Many people were all in on him. Just that upside in that offense. It's very rare that a top end draft prospect, a top 5 pick, goes to an offense that's just laid out for them to be successful with all those weapons. And San Francisco was that spot. But it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate for Trey Lance. And I just think Lance just lost all his confidence. He if you just look at his raw numbers in his first preseason start, he was 10 for 15 for 112 yards and a touchdown. He was sacked 4 times. And those numbers sound okay, but if you actually put on the tape and watched it, he just held on the ball. He just wasn't seeing the field. He was hesitating. You just could see a guy that was running around out there just not confident, which is why I think he got sacked so many times. The announcers during the game were talking about how he was battling for the backup job with Sam Darnold, and he essentially threw 2 interceptions that game. His 1 touchdown pass hit a defensive back in the hands, and it bounced off his hands right into the San Francisco tight end's hands for a touchdown. So that should have been a pick. And then he hit another defender right in the hands in the same half. So he didn't look great, and it's tough to see his this downfall of Trey Lance, because obviously his ceiling was the moon, and now we're starting to see his floor is the basement. But it looks like Brock Purdy is going to be the guy. I think Trey Lance needs to move on from San Francisco, get a fresh start, go to an organization that believes in him. It's clear that San Francisco is just kind of over the Trey Lance experiment. It's just insane that I just don't really understand what they were thinking when they actually even traded for him. They moved up from the number 12 overall pick. They traded the 12th pick and 2 future picks, which turned out to be Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Bradley Chubb. Obviously, Miami moved some of those future picks for those other 2 players in Hill and Chubb. But, I mean, what a landslide victory for the Miami Dolphins. It basically propelled them to relevancy right now. And the San Francisco 49ers are stuck with Trey Lance. And it doesn't really make much sense to move him because they obviously invested so much capital into him. But I don't know how Trey Lance is going to be successful in an organization where he knows that he's not the guy. He knows he's probably not going to get an opportunity unless Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, gets hurt. So just an unfortunate situation for Trey Lance. Hopefully we can see him in the future start somewhere else, but it's just not looking good for him in San Francisco.
What's crazy in all that, and that trade that you mentioned, all the pieces that Miami was able to acquire in that deal, and how the San Fran essentially has gotten really nothing out of Trey Lance, is in the last 2 years since that deal was made, the San Francisco 49ers have been to the NFC Championship game in both seasons, and the Miami Dolphins haven't won a playoff game yet, which is kind of nuts. Is it not?
Exactly. Me and Aaron were talking about this offline. It's like I just don't understand why they risked so much to draft. And when they're in win now mode, they're clearly in win now mode, right? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo brought them the Super Bowl, and they were Jimmy Garoppolo was a one throw away from potentially beating the Chiefs in that. And then you trade all this capital, the 12th pick and 2 future first, to draft a guy that played one game in his final season in college at North Dakota State, which is a lower level Division I program, and Trey Lance was clearly a project. So to bring a big project like that to the NFL and expect him to just be plugged in and all systems go, we're still Super Bowl contenders with Trey Lance, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And Aaron, maybe you can keep touching on this, but I just it's insane what San Francisco did. But hey, they're still pretty successful, and Brock Purdy's helping ease the pain. But it's just kind of insane.
Yeah, I mean, Purdy definitely bailed him out. I mean, they did take a big stab out and try to invest in, some teams thinking they're just, one piece away, and if that piece is, your main centerpiece as a quarterback, I think that's the thinking, trying to find who's that next, Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen or something like that. But yeah, they definitely risked a lot. I mean, I think this is a perfect segue to talk, like, as we just talked Anthony Richardson and Trey Lance back to back, where at least Anthony Richardson kind of has a cool backup. Like Gardner Minshew's got just like a good dude, right? Kind of just comes to work, guy you probably just want to have a beer with, right? Where I think
couple beers with
a couple beers, yeah, probably with Minshew. But I think to that point, if you're Purdy, yeah, if he's named the starter, you also don't want Trey Lance just breathing down your throat, every wrong throw you make or anything like that. So I do think San Francisco should try to trade Lance. I mean, they got Darnold as our third quarterback too. So you got to think that is the thinking. The problem is there's probably not teams that want to make that trade. So I agree with it. I think you got to just admit your mistakes and see what you can still recoup. Take your losses and maybe if it's just train Lance for, oh man, I don't even know what what you can find for him. Obviously not the same value, but I think you got to get him off that team. To get better chemistry with Purdy.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation. Stuff that you really can't make up. Just what they gave up to go get Trey Lance in the draft and how it panned out. Like not just a late round draft pick, but Mr. Irrelevant, like taking the spot. It's like a Hollywood script, and it's kind of crazy. But yeah, for fantasy, I'm in on Brock Purdy this year. He was his QB ADP was like in the 20s. I'm sure with this news it'll bump up going forward, but he was very productive last season when given the opportunity. I see more of the same this year going forward as well. So let's go to the team that actually ended up beating the 49ers. The only loss that Brock Purdy had last season in games that he started was against the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's go to them. We're not going to talk about their defense necessarily, but let's go to their running back room and talk about the kind of the collection of backs in there. Miles Sanders, as we know, has exited. They got the likes of Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, who were retained from last season. And then they bring in 2 newcomers in DeAndre Swift via trade and Rashad Penny via free agency. So let's go back to you, Ethan. What do you make of this running back room at this point in the preseason?
It just crowded. All 5 running backs in the team, which is Gainwell, Boston Scott, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Trey Sermon, are all listed as co-starters. In their preseason action, Boston Scott and Gainwell actually got quote unquote starters treatment and didn't suit up. It was Swift and Penny and Trey Sermon taking the bulk of the carries. Swift didn't play too much. He had a really nice 22-yard run in that game. He juked the defender out of their shoes and looked really good. And then Penny had nine touches on the ground. But I just think it might be a mess. Gainwell has been there last 2 years. He clearly is viewed highly by the coaching staff. And he's been taking a lot of first team reps in practice. So if Gainwell is the third down, the 2-minute drill running back, I mean, what what Swift's role look like. I think Penny has the profile to be the early down grinder. And I don't think really anybody on the team profiles to be the Rashad Penny. I mean, to be like that grinder, except for probably Trey Sermon, who's clearly fifth on this depth chart. He's probably going to get cut. So I think his role is actually probably safest in this offense, and his price is pretty cheap as well. But I think Kenny Gainwell is going to make Swift managers very frustrating. Um, and I don't think Boston Scott's going to mix in too much, but he could be a thorn in everyone's side, because I think this could be an ugly 4-man committee. And if that's the case, I kind of don't want anybody in Philadelphia. But unfortunately, so far, we don't have a lot of clarity. But I think Swift is the most talented back on that team. But there's not a lot of team investment, considering they only gave essentially a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick swap. And that 4th-round pick was in 2025. So it's not like they have a ton of commitment to Swift. They already know who Gainwell is, and they seem to like him a lot this year. So we'll see how it works out. But it's still pretty murky thus far in preseason.
Yeah, a lot of backs there. It's a committee league, as we know. But Aaron, what are you making of this log jam in Philadelphia?
Man, I think Ethan said it best. I mean, it definitely is cloudy over there, but unfortunately, it's one of the best offensive lines um, in football, right? So, if not the best. So, it's definitely, an offense that it would be nice to have shares of if you could guess the right running back. But the problem is, preseason, as you alluded to, people are getting rest and the veteran treatment, and we don't really know who's going to be that stud back there. And they're probably, I mean, there will be someone that kind of takes over more often in the early down work, as you said. I mean, as a lot of the listeners know, I'm one that has been a pretty big fan of Penny, right, in many weeks in daily fantasy, as you know, Kamish. But so I'm kind of rooting for Penny to kind of take over at the helm. But it's rough because, yeah, when you have that many competing backs, and then you throw on how much Jalen Hurts rushes as well, and then when he's stealing rushing touchdowns, it does make it murky, like you said. So once again, it's one of those. Hey, if you're a football fan, just of the Eagles, just like, hey, give me as many weapons as we can get to win, right? But for fantasy, it is a tough time of year where you got to be. I mean, we probably got to attend almost every practice to really get a good tell what's truly going on. And even that, a lot of times the coaches don't even know, right? They're wanting them to kind of fight it out and see who's going to come up on top. And even in the season, they still battle too. So it's truly a hard decision to make. But I think just value wise, I'd probably go with Penny.
I'm in the Penny camp too. I just see him averaging over 6 yards a carry each of the last 2 seasons, and I get him behind the best offensive line in football. To me, like, that's just at a very basic level, like something that you want to be gravitated towards. And he's you can get him at number 92 overall off the board per Fantasy Pros ADP. So that is still a range where I'm comfortable taking a risk. Now, it's murky though, for the reasons that we touched upon. So is it going to pan out? I don't know, but I'm willing to pay that price point to find out. And I think we'll get what we'll get as the year goes on here. It might be real muddy early, and then injuries take their toll, as we know. So someone's probably going to fall off in this backfield, and then the targets will be more concentrated. You'll probably get more role definition towards the second half of the season. And I don't know exactly who the guy in this room is going to be, but I know I'm going to want a piece of this running back room in those winter months as the season goes on, and into those December and January games that are where the money's made in the fantasy playoffs. So I think Penny at least has the workhorse size and the ability to carve out that role in this team. I'm still going to take a shot on him there, but it is murky, and I'm not over the top for any of these guys. But I probably will take shots on these guys in my various redraft leagues just to see what all the fuss is about. And if one of them pans out, then I'm going to be really happy with it. So any final departing thoughts on the Eagles running back room before we go on to another position group?
I've said enough.
It's been said. It has all been
No,
said.
no backsies for me this time.
Okay, awesome. Let's go to the Kansas City wide receiver room, Aaron. It's your this is your team, so Ethan and I will shut up and get out of the way and let you talk about what you're hearing at camp or what you think coming into 2023 for the defending champion Chiefs.
It's definitely an interesting story for the second year in a row, right? Just coming off a year where they lost Tyreek Hill. And then, I think Pat Mahomes himself last year said, "Hey, everybody's gonna score," right? That is, with the exception of Travis Kelsey, who we knew was going to be involved in the offense. It did turn out to be just that last year, and I think the talk is, yeah, you do want to have some pieces of high volume offenses, right? Especially in the passing game in a pass happy league. But yeah, we got a couple position battles at wide receiver over in Kansas City too. You got the good story with Justin Ross that I mentioned. You got a speedster veteran in the nose offense with MBS, but you got a newcomer with Rice. You got some practice squad guys with Watson over there that they like as well too. But I'm gonna go with the guy who most closely resembles Jamar Chase as far as an athletic profile goes. Also finishing in the 99 percentile, guy who we've been high on at different points in the year, and that's Kadarius Toney. Um, I think this is, in the fantasy world, the timing, it's almost sets it up where it's good because as soon as Tony was getting that hype preseason, he gets hurt. In my opinion, thankfully, it is just a meniscus. They're very easy to kind of repair, and it was just a past injury, kind of tweaked up a little bit. So they are confident he should be ready for week one, but sometimes that is enough for fantasy owners to kind of be scared off. Coming out the gates, they kind of want to draft their starters. But I think if you're patient, I think Tony's going to get involved in that offense. In Kansas City a lot because if we do know Andy Reid, we do know that some of his best wide receivers he's had has had a deep game. They have a red zone game and they make design plays to them. So I think Tony fits the mold of all those. As I mentioned, he's kind of looked at as just a speedster, but he does have a deep game, right? I mentioned the profile of Jamar Chase. He only was 300ths of a second slower than Jamar Chase in the 40, running a 4.41, 39 and a half inch vertical, and 11.4 broad jump, which was actually even higher than Jamar Chase's broad jump. So Tony is a freak. I think just the regular story is, can he stay healthy, which has been his concerns with the Giants. But I think if you want to take a risk, a little bit of a risk with a high reward, you go Tony. And then just to close off here in the wide receiver camp, I think if you want a little bit more safe play, you go Sky Moore. If you want a little bit more consistent, maybe PPR points, but might not have as many blow up games as Tony. So that's my couple cents, not few cents, but that's my couple cents in the wide receiver room over in KC.
Well, I'm actually I want one more cent out of you, Aaron Brown here. So I guess talk to the listeners about why Sky Moore is a safer option here. He last season he had just 22 receptions for 250 yards and no touchdowns in the regular season. So I guess what makes him safe in your estimation heading into 23?
So all the reports out of camp is saying he's a safe slot wide receiver. He's taking all the reps there at the slot. I mean, his true competition is Richie James, which is all another wide receiver coming over from the Giants. So as we know, wide receivers, even running backs in the Andy Reid offense do take a little bit of time to get accustomed to the playbook. So I do feel like a year two wide receiver has the advantage in the Andy Reid system over like a Richie James. So he's not really competing against Rice or MVS. It's really that slot role, which does get a lot of looks from Pat Mahomes when he's not throwing to Kelsey.
Fair enough, Ethan. Where are you at in this mess of receivers here in Kansas City?
Yeah, that's what it is. It is a mess. Just because outside Kelsey, Mahomes did such a good job dispersing the football last year. I think the only receiver we know their role is going to be like the most solidified role in this offense right now is MVS. MVS is going to be their X receiver. He's going to be the starting X. He's going to do his thing. He's going to have a couple boom weeks, and that's about it. I mean, in 17 games last year, I think he was wide receiver like 57 or whatnot in half point PPR. He's not a huge fantasy option, but in real life football and in that offense, his position is pretty much locked in. I would say, just because he's kind of the only one that profiles as that X receiver. I mean, you have Sky Moore and Tony who kind of work more so the middle of the field. I do agree that Sky Moore has an opportunity to kind of be, I guess, the quote unquote safer option in this offense, just because you can get him in the 11th round, wide receiver 52. And obviously, Tony, he has all the upside in the world, but he's always hurt. So, but I do like, I mean, his 9th round ADP. I think if he does stay healthy, I think that's a steal, and he has a chance to obviously blow up any week. But I mean, Sky Moore, I believe he played quarterback in high school, and then he transitioned to receiver at Western Michigan, which is obviously a lower level program. And he came out early after 3 years, so it's not like he has a lot of experience playing receiver and then going to the NFL and trying to play obviously in one of the best offenses in the league. That's kind of asking a lot for a rookie in year one. So I think Sky Moore is going to take a jump this year. I hope he can win that starting slot role, and uh, and obviously the sky is the limit in that offense. But Mahomes just does such a good job dispersing the ball, as I said. But I mean, Rashee Rice is the 16th round, essentially free. I do like Rashee Rice just for the simple fact there's a mystery there. I mean, he could come in the league and just dominate, or he could just be kind of what Sky Moore was last year, a rookie who's just trying to figure it out. But it just it's a weird wide receiver room. There's really no clear alpha. I think between Tony Moore and Rice is kind of basically juggling to see who's going to come out on top. I think Tony will come out on top in terms of overall points if he's healthy, but that's a big if with Tony. So that's my initial thoughts on this wide receiver room.
Well, let me just jump right in with Tony's health here. I'm actually going to run through all the injuries this guy has had since entering the league 2 seasons ago. It's funny. It actually starts 2 years ago today. Is these all the injuries he's had over that time frame. I'll just list the body parts here. His thigh injury, hamstring injury, ankle injury, re-aggravation of that same ankle injury, leg, quad strain, abdomen, shoulder, knee, thigh, hamstring, knee, like meniscus. Like it's crazy. Like this is like a laundry list of stuff for a guy who's only been in the league for 2 years. Yet I'm still going to talk him up as a guy that I want to draft. And I'm usually not the type of guy to do that with guys who are just constantly injured. But like the flashes we've seen in Tony are just ridiculous. And with now being in this Andy Reid offense for a full offseason, getting the chance to learn this system and be a part of it. Like, I know Andy is going to design plays to get the ball in the hands of his skill players. And I can get this guy outside the top 100 picks. He's currently number 105 in Fantasy Pros ADP. So, like, I say it all the time. I want cheap exposure to what, guys?
Good offenses.
Yeah, high-scoring offenses. Aaron, does your football team score a lot of points?
I think over 30 in the last, 3-4 years? Yep.
One of the highest offenses in the league, my man. Like, so I think they're going to be again this year. Like, yes, a lot of it goes to Travis Kelce. A lot of it's going to go to Travis Kelce. I'm not saying otherwise. I'm not saying Tony's going to usurp Travis Kelce as the target leader on this football team. But of the collection of wide receivers in that room, I'm just going to swing for the fences here on Kadarius Toney and just kind of hope that this is a formula where Kelce draws away a lot of defensive attention. It's a good system for an explosive playmaker, and I'm going to hope that it works out. And the best part of the whole thing, guys, is that if it doesn't pan out, I'm drafting him in a range where it's not going to kill me in my drafts, like you've been hearing me say week after week in all these episodes we've been doing. So that's kind of my thoughts on this receiver room. Anyone want to jump back in here real quick with any thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Aaron mentioned Richie James, and I don't think he should be forgotten in this messy receiver room. He had a decent year with the Giants last year, and by all accounts, he's having a pretty good camp with the Chiefs. His position on the team seems pretty secure according to reports, and that's just another body that's going to kind of make this a little convoluted. But Richie James, I do think is going to get his snaps. So it's going to be interesting to see of all these receivers, kind of who's going to come out on top. But as you guys both said, Tony clearly has the he's the front runner, and if he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a huge season.
Big if on Tony's health, absolutely. But we'll see where it goes. That's going to be a fun one to monitor throughout camp and into the season as well. And I will say quickly here too. I think in best ball format is kind of the perfect place to take swings at this receiver room towards the mid to late rounds of your best ball drafts, where you just get the best of a guy's performances. Like MVS is a guy to grab there, even though he's not sexy in the form of like week to week fantasy. You're never going to feel confident starting him or maybe even any of these guys. But if you can take a swing there with a late investment in your best ball drafts, that might be the place where you want to target this receiver room later down the board. But Sunday Surefire going forward should be a place that you target for all of your podcast needs, whether it's redraft, dynasty, best ball, whatever the case may be. Make sure you're checking us out here. And we've been doing a road trip here for those who've been following us over the last handful of months here around the whole country. And we're actually gonna finish off that road trip here with our next episode. We're gonna be covering the NFC South. So don't make sure you're missing a moment of that. Following us on socials as well at Sunday_Surefire on Twitter, and checking out our website, SundaySurefire.com, for all of our latest content there, including our blog posts as well. But until next time, folks, peace.